Now, another exciting interview now, and I'm honored to welcome lawyer, political and women's rights activist, writer, public speaker and political commentator, the remarkable Dr. Shola Mos Shogbamimu.
Hello.
Hello, how are you, Shola?
I'm very well, thank you.
Now, a very direct question to you on Anti-Racism Day. Why does racism exist?
Oh, listen, you're asking the wrong person. I mean, we should be asking that question to people who actually perpetuate racism, right? Look, the roots of racism date centuries, way far longer than you and I can even put time to. And the roots of it stems from what I call an inferiority complex of white supremacy, this ideology that certain people from one race are more superior to another because they consider the color of their skin God given. They consider the color of their skin the symbol of solution and the symbol of being better than other people. But the truth of the matter is that the way racism has played out over centuries is that it has become the excuse to dehumanize people who are not white. When you look at the instances, the incidences, slavery, what history shows us, what our ancestors had to go through, it tells us that racism comes from a place of hate. It comes from a place of dehumanization. It comes from a place of profiting one set of people over another to the detriment of another. And as far as I'm concerned, and I've written and I've talked about this, when we talk about racism, you see that it benefits one race, the white race, to the detriment of Black people, brown people, all because of this sense that one race is better than the other. Racism is not just about hating people because of the color of their skin. It's so much more than that. That's the root of it. But it's so much more than that. It is a power construct. That's how powerful racism is. It is a power construct that permeates through society, economically, politically, socially, in every facet of life, to the extent that you don't need to be some rich white person to be racist and have power over a Black or brown person. Heck, you could be a white homeless person, and your word will be taken over that of a Black person who might be well educated, who might even be in a better position, but society doesn't want to recognize that. Because we see how time and time again, society, because of racism, always gives white people the benefit of the doubt compared to Black and brown people. So why does racism exist? I could not possibly tell you that, because I'm not racist. I'm anti-racist. So the question that should be posed to me is why we should fight racism. And I think racism is evil. And if we are all going to join together to fight evil, it's going to take all of us, white, Black, brown, people from different backgrounds. We have to stand united to be actively, visibly, vocally anti-racist and wipe that thing off the face of the earth.
All right, so in that process, Shola, why is it important to have a day dedicated to anti-racism?
I think days like this, and God bless peace one day, but days like this, it gives us the opportunity to talk about what must be talked about. It gives us the opportunity to formulate action plans and draw buy-in from people, those who are grassroots, those who are corporations, those who are celebrities, influencers, to draw that kind of widespread public support. And I think that is why a day like today is very important. What I don't want a day like today to be about is more talking and nothing being done. If we have another, next year comes, the following year comes, and we have another day and we have more people like me, like you talk, and we all come together, but there are no visible changes, then I'm going to be questioning what the heck are we all doing? It's time to stop talking and start doing. We've spent, heaven knows that conversations around racism took place in my grandparents' time, in my great-great-great grandparents' time, right? The question now should be, what are we doing to tackle this in the 21st century so that my children don't need to be having this conversation? I would very much prefer that, right? That's what we should be talking about. That's why a day like today, to get buy-in from everyone, to agree and solidify action, and to also talk about what we've done, how much further do we need to go? How do we call out those who are in power and make them accountable? That's what a day like today means for me. So I'm not just here to talk about it. I'm here to say enough is enough with the talking. This is what we must do.
All right. Well, this conversation comes at a time where there is, of course, conflicts around the world, military conflicts, namely Ukraine within Europe, but of course there are other conflicts happening around the world. Now, in the context of these conflicts, how does racism arise to the surface, and how can we address it during these times?
Right now, for a number of people, they would have been shocked and surprised by the news of Africans and Asians and people from the Middle East being treated with discrimination and experiencing racism on the Ukraine borders. Now, yes, I was outraged that happened to them, but I was not surprised. And this is where we need to get to in our society, where we stop being surprised. Yes, we're talking about the heart of a humanitarian crisis, yet the ugliness of racism rears its head. How can that be? People ask. Well, it will be as long as people are racist, because at the end of the day, I think people act true to form. People act true to form, and that's what we border officials said to Black and brown people, well, only Ukrainians, you can't go. When they beat them, when they hit them, when they push them away, when they hurt them, as though these Black and brown people don't have don't have lives that are at risk because Russia is bombing Ukraine, as though their lives don't matter. So when they are told that you have to wait until Ukrainians have gone, that tells you how people feel towards them, right? Plus, if you think about the fact that there are those who want to defend this behavior by saying, well, no, they were trying to get women and children on board. Well, Black and brown people have women and children too. What about them? How can you not prioritize them too? You see, I understand that in our society, we often have to prioritize the most vulnerable, the elderly, the sick, women, children. I get that. But that has to apply across the board. You can't say just white people, you come on board first, let's save you, and then all these Black and brown people stay behind. That's wrong. And then look at the way the West have treated refugees from Ukraine compared to refugees from other war-torn countries. Just think about that. And people go, oh, I can't believe this is happening. This is so blatant. But it's always been there. Why is it that, for instance, in the United Kingdom, and I know the UK is taking far less than other European countries, but the reality is here you have the UK government offering £350 a month for British people to open their homes to refugees. That was not an offer to refugees from Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine. That was never an offer, because what applied to them was to turn back the boats. We don't want them here. So when you look at the way the West have treated, and interpreted, using again Ukraine as an example, the way they've treated and interpreted the war in Ukraine versus wars that they've reported in other parts of the world, that shows you how ingrained racism is, institutional racism is. Even the reporting of the Ukraine war, about how, oh my goodness, there's people from Ukraine, they're one of us, blonde hair, blue eyes, middle class. They're not one of those people. They're one of us. They're educated. I'm sorry. Do they not realize that Black and brown people from Africa, from Asia, from the Middle East are educated? That they are also running and leaving their homes because their lives are at risk. Is there any compassion or humanity extended to them? No. Therein lies the source of racism. Every single time it rears its ugly head, it's to dehumanize Black and brown people, to make us look and sound and seem like we're less than human. That's just wrong.
Sure. So, in such a context, what would you suggest for someone who wants to be educated more about racism and anti-racism, and more specifically to your point about action? If people want to take more action, where would you direct them?
Okay, peace one day. Today is a great day for education because I can see incredible speakers, incredible people from different backgrounds speaking on this issue. But the first thing you must do is not be silent. That's the first thing you must do. And it's not okay. Can I just say it's not okay to be afraid to do something about it, to be afraid to get something wrong. Because if you walk on eggshells on the issue of racism, you are utterly useless to me. You're utterly useless to people that need you to step up. So if you want to be useful, I want you to read. I want you to engage in conversation. I want you to influence within your sphere of influence. Like I said, you do not need LinkedIn to call you an influencer before you know you're an influencer. So if that means influencing your family, your friends, your school friends, your workmates, educate yourself. Don't be afraid to engage in conversation, to ask questions, clear the cobwebs in your head. And if you make mistakes, which you will, because we're all human, pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep moving forward. The important thing is this: do not expect Black and brown people who are experiencing the racism to bear the burden of unpicking your learning. You have to take responsibility for that because we have enough to deal with. I want us to be more responsible about who we vote into positions of power. Do not knowingly, unknowingly, unintentionally go vote a racist as your prime minister, president, head of state, or the like. Don't do that. Take responsibility. Don't give away your votes or your voice cheaply. Use it to make it count if you truly want to fight racism.
All right. Well, many messages in there, but I'm going to ask you, Shola, to give one final one to those members of the global community on the International Day for the Elimination of Racial Discrimination. One important message about anti-racism that you wish to convey.
I want us to understand that anti-racism is about humanity, and it's going to take all of us to make a real difference. I want us to recognize that racism does not just happen locally or just within a nation. It happens between nations, particularly between white nations and Black and brown nations. And racism is not just overt, it's covert. And the thing about it, it doesn't need to be intentional to be racist. The impact is the same. So on the international stage, I want our leaders on the international stage, be them governments, international organizations, corporations, and the like, to do better. I don't want you to just talk. I want you to take action, especially with those within the sphere of your influence. The fact that that country is one of your allies doesn't mean you should not call them out. The fact that that influencer or that president or that corporation is powerful in their own right does not mean you should not call them out. We cannot grow if we are not doing what we ought to do, which is to act fearlessly and to stand in the gap for those who are suffering and experiencing degrees of inhumanity because of systemic racism, systemic inequality, and social injustice. So please, in the name of God and all that is good, now is the time to take the right kind of action. And you know it here. I don't need to tell you what inequality looks like. You should know. And if you see it, you stand against it. If you smell it, you stand against it. If it even remotely.
Well, that throws on such a powerful point. But anyways, that was Dr. Shola Shogbamimu, Our thanks to her for being with us today, but also her support over the last few years for this campaign.